Our next speaker, some of you may have heard him 2 years ago. His name is Bernal. He just flew. He's coming in hot. He just got here from the airport. He had a delayed flight all the way from Boston. But he's going to knock your socks off about gambling. And if you were not at the last conference, or if you want to go watch it again, on our YouTube channel, you can hear what he said last time. He really covered the lottery and just gambling in general and Alabama. And he really got people fired up. I asked him to come back and talk about mostly, I mean, he's going to talk about everything, but I wanted him to focus in on online sports betting, especially. It is a major phenomenon happening across our country. Kids, parents have no idea what's going on. Grandparents have no idea what's going on. This is a big deal. And Bernal is one of the experts. And I do want to read his, he flew all the way here, and you've got to hear about Les. Of course, he's a good friend of Alabama Eagle Forum. He is the National Director of Stop Predatory Gambling. He's come all the way from Boston. He has been cited in more than 650 newspapers and magazines, including the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Economist, Washington Post, Sports Illustrated. He's appeared on national television and radio, including 60 Minutes, CNN, Fox News Channel, Dr. Phil Show, and more. And you can read his extensive bio more in that link that you have in the QR code on your program.
If you don't think this is happening in your extended family, you're wrong. Okay, so predatory gambling is happening across our country today. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And so this affects all of us, regardless of whether or not you yourself gamble. But it's going to affect your community and pretty much the people you love in a very profound way. Just a little bit about our organization. Actually, hold on one second. Okay, so with Stop Predatory, and actually before we even get into these two things, actually, I want to recognize Becky Gerritsen. I've had a chance to know the last few years. And I use a lot of sports analogies. We would give 3 first-round draft picks to have Becky Gerritsen on our team. She's that great. So very talented, as talented a state leader as that we interact with, and I mean that sincerely. And I don't. We have a national board member from Alabama. I don't know if he's here today. Greg.
He's in Israel.
Okay, so Greg Davis, many of you know, was Al Cap, is one of our national board members, very special person, a big part of our mission. So Alabama has been part of our base for a very long time. But very briefly, Stop Predatory Gambling's mission is that we believe that people are worth more than money. Okay, that's what this choice comes down to. It's a value choice. We believe people are worth more than money. And we're a national nonprofit organization. We have members in all 50 states. And our mission is to reveal the truth behind commercialized gambling, to advocate for those who've suffered harm, to prevent more victims, and then to champion policy reforms that stop predatory gambling. And I want to make clear that we do not accept financial contributions from commercialized gambling interests. So people always ask me, Les, why are you so passionate on this issue? Why have I dedicated the last almost 17 years, I've dedicated my life to this issue around the country. And I'm passionate about this. I grew up in Massachusetts, and like most of you, when you're in elementary school or in your middle school, one of the first things you learn about in government, one of our core democratic principles, and I say democratic principles, I mean with a small d, is that we have a system of no taxation without representation. Right? That's one of our core founding principles. That's in our DNA. Today in America, we have a system, really excluding Alabama is one of a handful of states that don't do this, but around the country, we have a system of taxation by exploitation in state after state. And you're going to hear today why that's the case. It's unbelievable. It's America's most neglected major problem. Okay, and I will say, when I testify, one of the first lines I always lead with is, there is no single act of government, of state government, that inflicts more harm on the financial well-being, the social well-being, and the mental well-being of the people than the cruel and oppressive institution of predatory gambling. Because that's what we're talking about. This is an institution. This is a government program. This is not what you do privately. Predatory gambling is an institution in our country today, in state after state. And Alabama, to its eternal credit, has said no to that, and you're a better state for that. So I always start with what predatory gambling is not, right? Because people are going to give you a lot of pushback. Let people do what they want. You're already free in Alabama today to place a sports bet with each other. You're free to do that, okay? You're free to participate in Friday night poker games, March Madness brackets, I'm Catholic, so Catholics, we have some churches have bingo nights, okay? You got buying a square in the Super Bowl office pool, a friendly wager on the golf course with the guys from work. Like, those are forms of gambling, but those are social forms of gambling. There's no house involved. Okay, so that is not predatory gambling. Predatory gambling is when powerful corporate gambling interests partner with state governments to use commercialized gambling. That's the key word, commercialized gambling, to exploit and defraud citizens in their communities. Because when gambling is being run as a business, this is what separates it from social gambling. When it's run as a business, it creates a predatory and adversarial relationship between the gambling operator and the gambler. There's no other business where that's the case, where there's a predatory and adversarial relationship between the business and their customer. They try to take you down. Okay, if people like this, like going to the stock market. If you have a stock analyst, a financial advisor, he or she, they're trying to make you money. This is an industry, they're trying to take you down, whether it's a state lottery or these online operators or regional casinos. So what I did today, just briefly put together a few truths about predatory gambling. And as Becky said, she asked me to emphasize online gambling a bit more in state lotteries, and I will do that. But I just want to give these core truths apply to all forms of state-sanctioned gambling, okay? So truth number one is commercialized gambling in America, it's highly addictive, but that's not why it's illegal in Alabama and other states. It's illegal in my state, and we have a lottery. My state has regional casinos, and we have online gambling. It's illegal for me to do any of that as a business, with one exception, unless I partner with the state, okay? And the reason why it's still illegal, okay, is not because it's addictive. It's illegal because it's a con, okay? It's a form of consumer financial fraud in the family of price gouging and false advertising, okay? So when you hear the cliche, the house always wins, that's what that means, is the longer you participate in commercialized gambling, it's not a matter of if you're going to get beat, it's a matter of when, how often, and to what extent. Okay, it's a con. It's a form of consumer financial fraud when you run it as a house. So you got two examples. If you run one of these dietary businesses and you're advertising illegally, the government steps in, shuts you down. Gas. When a gas crisis and these gas stations, they gouge you in prices, your state attorney general steps in. Predatory gambling, everyone shields their eyes to the business practices because the state's a partner to it. Okay, so to help you articulate this, how is it different than every other business? This is the best graphic I've ever seen, because this is from Natasha Schell's book, Addiction by Design. On the left there, you start with a whole bunch of money, that little graph, and over time, it's inevitable that you're gonna end up losing all that money, okay? You don't lose it all at once. They program it so you keep you in action as long as they can, but over time, you're gonna lose all that money, okay? So the amount of spins, you participate in, over time, you are gonna end up losing everything. You'll win occasionally, but over time, you're gonna get beat. So that's what that means. It's about the math. So whether it's a lottery game, a casino game, or these online gambling operators, it's a con, okay? In the states, it's done with the blessing of state government. So truth number two, they're gonna say, hey, we can regulate this in Alabama. We're gonna regulate this here, protect you, protect your family. The problem with this, and we don't need to speculate what it would look like in Alabama. You just have to look across the country. Truth number two is there's an irreconcilable conflict of interest that exists between the interests of the state regulating commercialized gambling, whether it's online gambling, lotteries, casinos, versus the public good, okay? And that conflict of interest is the state is charged with protecting the public from the very business practices that bring in the most money to the state. So if they meaningfully protected you, if they regulated this industry in a way that protected you and your family, the people you care about, there's no money for the state, okay? And you'll see why going up. The business model is based on exploitation. That's why we call it taxation by exploitation. So let's look at what regulated gambling, let's look at what this irreconcilable conflict of interest looks like across the country. And Alabama, for the most part, has been spared this, okay, with some exceptions. But for the most part, you've been spared what's been happening in other states. So it looks like easy access to hardcore forms of gambling, like slot machines, okay, both in person and online. On the upper right, I'm not sure how well you can see that. That's a laundromat in rural Illinois. In southern Illinois, they got laundromats, and they call them wash and wins, okay? There's slot machines in the laundromat that are run by the government. The private entities run the slots, but they partner with the state to do that. Think about that, wash and wins. The bottom right, that's from State College, Pennsylvania, which is one of the biggest colleges. That's where Penn State is located, one of the biggest college towns in America. They direct mail, FanDuel, the online gambling operator, is direct mailing every household in that college town to lure them over to the FanDuel casino. Because we talk about sports gambling in Alabama and these other places. FanDuel, DraftKings, those guys aren't at their core, they're not sports gambling operators. They're online casino operators. That's where the money is. They use the online sports gambling apps to lure people in, to get you to sign up. And then they lure you over to once they get online casino legalized. They like to call it iGaming to make it look like it's just people playing video games. But it's internet casino gambling. And that's where the money is. So 7 states in America have legalized internet casinos. There hasn't been a major state in 6 years that has legalized internet casinos because it's been such an epic public policy disaster. Okay, at 90% of the money in states coming in, a lot of these states is coming in from the online casino portion of their business. Okay, so when they talk about online sports gambling in Alabama, that's not what they really want. They want online casinos. They want a Las Vegas casino in your home, in your kid's home, your grandkids' iPad, on their phones, you name it. That's what this business is about. And then lastly, on the far left, these are my favorite things to talk about. Okay, now and this is what Alabama would have. Most people think the lottery, they think Powerball, Mega Millions, okay, the big jackpots. That makes up like a minuscule slice of revenue to state lotteries. It's a tiny piece of the revenue scheme. Where lotteries make their money is in high volume, high price tickets, or in a lot of cases, electronic gambling machines, okay? On the far left, okay, Texas is a state, has a $7.25 an hour minimum wage. In low-income communities across Texas state government sells a $100 scratch-off ticket, okay? In communities where there are barely any banks, they got, in every liquor store, gas station, bar, they're selling $100 scratch-off tickets. You gotta work 2 full days at a minimum wage job in Texas before you can lose it in 5 seconds to a $100 scratch-off ticket to your own government, okay? That's what regulated gambling looks like. So you talk about the American dream today. That's the American dream for a lot of folks if you're low income and live in a low income community. All right, here's another thing. So here's a neighboring state. You hear a lot about Georgia. They're going over the border less to Georgia to buy their lottery tickets. Let's look at Georgia. And I already mentioned there's a big story in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution this week and how the Hope Scholarship program, where all the lottery money goes, they keep losing more money, like it's going down, because the only way you can sustain the revenue scheme from gambling is adding more and more extreme forms of gambling into the public square. Okay, so the Hope Scholarship program's having all these issues, but here's what regulated gambling looks like in Georgia. It's not a $100 scratch-off ticket, it's a $50 scratch-off ticket. Again, in a state where people make $7.25 an hour. So in Georgia, you got to work 1 day at a minimum wage job before you lose it all in 5 seconds, okay? But they market that across the state. You're going to have that. You're going to have $50 scratch-off tickets in your state. So it's not about Powerball and Mega Millions. That's where they make their money. And it's done exempt from truth in advertising regulations on the Federal Trade Commission, okay?
Will you explain that? That's really important.
Yeah. So just to be clear, because back to the irreconcilable conflict of interest, the state regulates this industry, okay? And so part of that regulation is regulating the advertising and marketing. And under the Federal Trade Commission, state lotteries and now you see these other forms of commercialized gambling that states sanction, they're exempt from truth in advertising regulations under the Federal Trade Commission. So if you run an insurance company and you say, come sign up with me in my insurance policy and you might win $1 million, like you're gonna get shut down. But over here, the lotteries, they can get away with anything. Okay, and this is an example what you're gonna see right now. But that's it. So no other business gets those set of rules. Like they have a whole different set of rules for the predatory gambling operators in this country. All right, so here's what lotteries look like in America today. And this is what would be happening in Alabama today if you had this, okay? On the far left, this is my home state of Massachusetts, okay? The state likes to call itself a city on a hill, right? We're gonna do predatory gambling, but we're gonna do it better and safer than everybody else. This is what it looks like in Massachusetts. They have Santa Claus. That's a scratch-off ticket. That's a $20 scratch-off ticket in the state of Massachusetts being sold at this very second. Okay, Santa Claus on a scratch-off ticket. On commercialized gambling is recognized by the American Psychiatric Association as addictive as cocaine, opioids, and heroin. Okay, it's known as a highly addictive product. They're putting a Santa Claus on it. Who do you think that's marketed to? Like, who do you think they're appealing that to? On the right, that's from the state of Wisconsin, right? Midwestern values. They got a lottery. Frosty the Dough Man. Okay. I mean, think about that. Like, we laugh at it, but it's all over the state of Wisconsin. And my state has that version. Every state has these things. Exempt from truth. Who do you think that's a $2 ticket? Who do you think they're marketing? Who do you think they're appealing to that? Okay, I'm older than a lot of you in this room. When I was growing up in the early 90s, one of the biggest high-profile issues in our country was how tobacco companies were targeting kids to get them hooked on smoking using the Joe Camel cartoon figure. Like, Joe Camel was nothing compared to putting Santa Claus and Frosty the Snowman on an addictive product. Think about it. Like, that's a government program doing that. And everyone shields their eyes. But that's what it looks like in Alabama if you don't stop this. All right, and here's one thing. So when people think, again, lotteries are Powerball and Mega Millions, lotteries today, what the future of online lotteries is, they're offering state-run online casino-type games. Okay, state-run online casino-type games. Okay, state of Virginia, online casino-type games. That's the future for lotteries. So you're not just going to bring in the brick-and-mortar lottery retailer. What all these lotteries really want is to go online to sell young people, do it, and the experience is like playing online slots. So here's one. Okay, and this is, if you have kids, under 30 or under 35, you'll appreciate this. This is an online game from the state of Michigan titled The Ultimate Wizard. Okay, who do you think they're appealing to that? A generation that's grown up with books like Harry Potter, all this wizard. That is appealing to young people, to kids, as an online game. Online gambling is the most addictive form of gambling of all. It's gambling fentanyl. Okay, and that's what they're doing. So that's what we're really debating here in Alabama. Okay. All right. Truth number 3 is one of the ones I'm most passionate about. A major reason why so many families in America today don't experience financial peace is because of the extreme forms of commercialized gambling sponsored by state government. Okay, I use that term financial peace purposely because I'm a big Dave Ramsey guy, and I think we could use a lot more financial peace in our country for American families. But what role does predatory gambling play in financial peace? Let's take a quick look. All right. For the last 3 or 4 years, all we've heard about the rising price of eggs and the impact it's having on family budgets. Okay, the rising food costs and so on. What's the financial impact on American families of predatory gambling? Over the next 5 years, the American people, largely most of whom Alabama's been spared, because let me include Alabama, because you guys have been spared by this for the most part. The American people are on a downward spiral to lose $1 trillion of personal wealth to forms of commercialized gambling sanctioned by the state. If you add up all the financial losses of state lotteries, regional casinos, and online gambling, it's going to equate to more than $1 trillion of lost wealth over the next 5 years. Okay, the American people are losing $300,000 every minute to a government program. Wow. That's a lot of eggs. Okay, that's a lot of eggs. Okay, you just cut that number by half. 50% over the next 5 years, that's $500 billion you'd put back into the daily lives of the American people. There is no policy reform from either political party that comes within 1,000 miles of making more of a difference in people's lives than just cutting the amount of money, personal wealth citizens are losing to this institution of predatory gambling. All right, and how about, again, let's talk about Georgia less. We're going over the border to Georgia to buy the lottery tickets. What's the impact of predatory gambling on Georgia families? Over the next 5 years, Georgia families are on course to lose $11.2 billion of their personal wealth to forms of gambling sanctioned by the state. And Georgia's just got a lottery, and they got a really out-of-control lottery, but they don't have casinos yet. They're lobbying hard for them. They don't have online gambling. That's just to lotteries, $11.2 billion of lost wealth that the people of Georgia are losing, okay? That's $4,261 every minute in Georgia. You're not experiencing that here in Alabama. Okay, I know every state's got its challenges, okay? But you are far better off today because you have not had lotteries and big-time predatory gambling here for the last 30 years. You have a lot more wealthier, you have better families, stronger families, better state budget issues than the rest of the country because you haven't gone down this road. Okay, all right, kind of segue into sports gambling a little bit. America today has experienced a metastasizing epidemic of gambling addiction among young adults and teens. That's the truth. Okay, in state after state that's had these online sports gambling for more than a year or two, the number one demographic calling gambling addiction hotlines today are young adults and teenagers. You have moms on these hotlines calling with their teenage sons next to them. Like, that was never happening before. Okay, and the lotteries and regional casinos, they largely impact lower income families. Online gambling is affecting middle class and upper class families. No one is spared from this. If your kids watch sports or are involved with sports, this is hitting them. Your grandkids, this is hitting them. All right, and so when all this advertising that kids see to online gambling right now, it normalizes them. They think sports and gambling go hand in hand. Okay, so now they think, to be a sports fan today, and you see the ads where they market it, you're not a sports fan anymore unless you're wagering on the games. Like, I love sports. I played sports my whole life. I was a high school and men's college basketball coach for a period of time in my life. Like, I love it. Gambling was always on the fringe of the sporting life. It was never at the center of it. Today, gambling is at the center of American sporting life, regardless of the sport that you care about. And it's the demographic that's being affected the most are young men in this country. We've already have a whole of those writings about how these young males are having all these issues already. Now they're piling gambling on these kids, and these kids are getting rolled over. It's unbelievable what's happening across our country. Here is, I know you have a governor's race coming up. This is the Republican governor of Ohio just said in Fortune magazine, Ohio shouldn't have done it. Okay? Ohio shouldn't have done it. I absolutely regret legalizing sports gambling. I mean, it's a mistake. It's been an epic public policy failure. And yet you have people here, politicians lobbying it for here in Alabama. This is the only issue where we love to talk about states or laboratories of democracy. All right, we're going to be these pioneers of creative policy to improve people's lives. This is the one exception. Hey, it's been a disaster in New Jersey. It's been a disaster in Ohio. But you know what? Let's do it here in Alabama. It's a great. It is because it's not driven by grassroots. It's driven by the greed of powerful financial interests and a handful of public officials of both parties who lust for more power. Okay, there's no grassroots movement for any of this. All right. Truth number 5. You hear a lot about the money. All right, what's going to bring in money to Alabama and so on. This is the ultimate. That's those of you old enough to remember Bob Barker and The Price is Right, and that's the shell game. Predatory gambling as a budget source is the ultimate shell game. It's the ultimate budget gimmick. Okay, and so in state after state, it shows that it does not increase education spending. Okay, over the long term, you, the non-gambler especially, you end up paying higher taxes for less services in the long term when predatory gambling gets introduced into a state. Because who do you think pays for all the social services, the criminal incarceration costs, all the broken families, the addiction costs? When these people get wiped out by this, who do you think picks that tab up? Who pays for the health care bills, the housing costs when people can't pay their rent? You do. You, the non-gambler. So you pay even if you don't play. It's the ultimate budget gimmick. Okay? And especially when it comes to education. There's no net improvement to education spending. And that's true for state after state. Truth number 6, they're going out of state less to gamble. They're going Georgia, Mississippi, Tennessee, you name it. That is recycled. These are national companies here in Alabama lobbying for this. These same companies are in all your surrounding states. It's a recycled public relations narrative by the gambling industry. Okay, they just recycle that because there's no grassroots movement for this. They create this phony PR narrative about you're going to recapture all this money. But the logic of doing that, and this took me a while to kind of coin this, but this kind of captures it in its essence. It's the same thing as losing $1 to save a penny. We're gonna build casinos in Alabama. We're gonna do online sports gambling here to try to recapture money going out of state. Okay, But the logic of it, it's like losing $1 to grab a penny back. It's absurd. None of us would do that in real life, okay? So think of it in those terms. All right, and this is kind of the sports gambling issue. So obviously, Les, I hear you. I don't like sports gambling, but it's here. These legislators tell us there's nothing we can do about it. They're already doing it. We're going to wipe out the illegal market. That's part of the PR narrative. So a few quick facts on that. First, in November 2022, the New York Times did a 4-part series on the rollout of online gambling in this country, sports gambling, and how it was driven by these powerful financial interests, a big public affairs firm out of New York City, okay? And one of the key things about it was it showed that, from the New York Times report, that the whole illegal gambling narrative was orchestrated by the American Gambling Association, which is the national trade lobby for the gambling industry. Like it's a PR campaign, okay? This whole thing has been orchestrated to create this phony momentum to push across sports gambling, all right? And just to put it in their own words, there's nothing better in politics to use people's own words against them. The American Gambling Association in 2022, all right, this is 4 years after the legalization of sports gambling in this country. They wrote a letter to then U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland, and they were calling on the then Attorney General to take action against illegal online gambling sites in the country, saying internet searches for illegal gambling sites increased by 38% in the last year, faster than the rate of searches for legal betting sites. A whole illegal sports betting market continues to exist through offshore sites. 52% of citizens continue to use illegal bookmakers. Okay? Searches for offshore brands, these illegal brands, represented a majority of all sports book searches. Wait, this is the same organization that said, legalize it, and we'll wipe out the illegal market. We'll bring it out of the shadows. Their own letter to the Attorney General saying it's been an epic failure. Illegal gambling increases. And that is true for all forms of gambling, not just online, but especially true for online gambling. Okay, so that's part of the lie. That's part of the con of this whole issue. And then this was right from my own state of Massachusetts. These gambling commissions, they're allies of the industry. They're no allies of ours. So this makes this fact even more damning. In Massachusetts Gambling Commission published a study that showed that citizens who used illegal sports books in Massachusetts jumped from 4% in 2022. So that was the year before sports gambling was legalized in Massachusetts. Okay, so in 2022 was 4%. 1 year after legalization, it jumped to 18% of citizens in Massachusetts were using illegal sites. That's an increase of 400% 1 year after legalization. Politicians need to tell the truth to all of you about this issue. They're not telling the truth on this issue. All right, the last 2 quick things I'll say to you. When they stand up and cite all these illegal gambling numbers for sports gambling and how people are doing it anyways, those are legal numbers. I said, those are coming from the gambling industry, the American Gambling Association and their allies. That's not coming from the FBI. It's not coming from the Alabama Law Enforcement Agency. They're not standing up telling you, hey, we need to legalize online sports gambling here to wipe out all the illegal gambling happening. That's not happening by your own public officials. These are gambling industry numbers that they're trying to push on you. All right, and all of them who push these numbers, they all have a financial interest in the outcome. All right, kind of winding down. This is one of my favorite ones because you're a state that, thankfully, you have in your constitution. The people get to vote on this, right? If the event ramps through the legislature, the people can vote on whether or not to amend the Constitution. So your politician standing up saying, any politician who tells you, I'm going to let the people vote on this. Let the people vote on this. They're really saying, let us buy the vote. Okay, that's what they're saying. All right, because this is there's no real debate that occurs when there's a referendum on this. It's like they're going to spend $30 million on a statewide referendum, and they're not even going to mention the word gambling. Okay, they're going to talk about, hey, you want to give that favorite teacher of yours at the public school a raise? Vote for question 1. You want bridge construction? You want a new bridge in your community? Vote yes, question 1. You want to reduce property taxes in Montgomery? Vote even though all of it's a con, that's what the ads are going to say. And even then, they're going to barely squeak it past to win, if they win at all. But it's just going to, even then, it's going to barely just pass the 50% if they can do it. But that's how they're going to advertise it. And they spend millions of dollars misrepresenting the issue, okay? But it's about let us buy the vote. So that's the pushback to politicians who say, let the people vote on this, you know. That's part of the con. And I have some quick talking points to help you on that, to push back on that. If you have a statewide official saying, hey, I think the people should vote on this, if that is really true, they want to give people a chance to overturn the Constitution, then make the ballot question a straight up and down yes or no. Like no carrots. No saying, hey, vote yes on question 1 to do college scholarships for the kids of Alabama. You know, no carrots saying vote yes on question 1 to reduce your taxes. Just say, do you support legalizing online gambling in Alabama? Yes, and that thing's sinking like faster than a piece of steel in the ocean. Like they have to put the carrots in to get it passed. But if they're really serious in letting the people vote, then no carrots in any language, and that'll quiet people down. The next piece is, you know, the dozens of lobbyists working for the gambling industry in the state, they won't support that because they know it won't pass. Okay, it won't do. So you put them on the defensive with that. All right, and the last thing I always love to get pushback on the let us buy the vote crowd is, hey, if you're talking to a politician, say if you were outspent in your primary 3-1, you know, regardless of your merits, it's going to be really hard for you to win re-election. You know, now imagine being outspent 1,000-1, and you're going to stand up and say, oh, the people have spoken, like somehow that's the democratic process. That's not the democratic process. Like, I mean, but no legislator would say, yeah, I'm going to let this guy outspend me 1,000-1, and I'm going to have a legitimate chance to win. You know, yes, occasionally someone might beat the odds and beat someone outspending you that much, but like, it's blatantly dishonest. No legislator would ever want to go up against somebody spending the 3-1, never mind 1,000-1, because that's what it would be like here in Alabama if it goes to the ballot. It's a dishonest campaign. All right, the last couple things, and I'll take some questions, is things you can do. Number 1 is stay involved in the Alabama Eagle Forum in this fight. Make this one of your top priorities, because this is going to affect every family in Alabama, regardless of whether you gamble or not. Secondly, become not only is this a state issue, this is a national issue. So if you can become an ambassador for Stop Predatory Gambling in your community, talk about this issue. Ultimately, we're going to need a federal solution to this. Please consider becoming a monthly giver to us. And lastly, you can sign up on our website at stoppredatory.gambling.org. So with that, I got 10 or 15 minutes for some discussion with you all. And
I had a great opportunity when was that? In October, to go to Austin, Texas, and be part of the Stop Predatory Gambling conference that they had. And they brought in some amazing people from Great Britain who are tackling some of these online issues. And he's got some really young people that are doing great things on this issue. Tell us a little bit about what happened in England. Give us that story.
Yeah, so right now, so a lot of these companies that you see, like FanDuel is owned by a UK entity, okay? The back-end technology for online gambling operator like DraftKings, it's a lot of it's these UK-based, United Kingdom-based. Like, they're taking the same business practices that absolutely wiped out a generation of young people in the United Kingdom, and they've exported it here to the U.S. and are unleashing it at lightning speed. Where people, this happened. A lot of this got rolled out during COVID, where like people weren't paying attention to other issues, and so they ran these bills through. There's very little public discussion, public spotlight, and so today in the United Kingdom, gambling addiction is everywhere amongst, young people. You have every teams with gambling companies' logos emblazoned on them. So there has been pushback because people have suffered so much. Gambling addiction has the highest rate of suicide of any addiction in the world, and so there were so many young people addicted to suicide, addicted to gambling, and committed suicide, that there's actually a movement of families who had loved ones commit suicide to this, that are now kind of lobbying the government for reform. So there's a huge backlash happening in the United Kingdom because they have sunk so low on this, and that's where they're trying to take our country, to that bottom level where everything is a wager. And you're seeing it now, can I touch on prediction markets real quick?
Yeah.
So there's something I didn't touch on here because it's a complicated issue, and I could talk for an hour just about this one concept. Because it's something called prediction markets. So some of you may have heard of them. Prediction markets are something that, because gambling has been so normalized today by state governments, is any person who's, looking for an edge, looking away, driven by greed, looking to kind of cheat and exploit people, they're finding every nook and cranny they can to exploit existing laws. So there's these financial interests found a loophole at the federal level on what's called a Commodities Futures Trading Commission. So many of you know, like, if you're a farmer, you could buy futures in wheat futures, right, to protect your crops, or you could buy futures in pork bellies, right? There was a legitimate economic purpose for those. What these companies did is they're going to come. We're going to create something called a prediction market, where you can wager on virtually anything. Like wager on the weather. You could wager on when the Los Angeles fires were going to be put out. You could wager on, what suit the president of the Ukraine, what color suit the president of the Ukraine was going to wear when he met President Trump. Like, ridiculous. Anything you can imagine, ridiculous concepts. But it's everywhere. So they're coming in on the CFTC, and so now they're also offering sports gambling. So it's a different experience than going to a DraftKings app. But in some ways, it's the same because you're wagering, but it's more of a yes/no type of vote of bet. So not to get too complicated, but they're allowing prediction markets which are superseding state laws around gambling. So that's a whole nother issue. So that's because we've normalized gambling so much. Gambling has become, that's what we call it, America's most neglected major problem. It's huge. And so you're going to hear a lot of companies like Kalshi, Polymarket. If you watch 60 Minutes just been a big segment on Polymarket last Sunday night. It's not so much my generation and older. It's younger people. They connect with these Robinhood trading accounts. You can take your investments and then dump it into these prediction markets, which are like just gambling. Like you take your retirement fund and wagering. It's the amount of money that people are losing today, particularly young people, is jaw-dropping.
Well, and in some of those apps where they're betting, they don't get the money back. Like when they win, it ends up being a credit, right? It's really hard to get.
Again, it's very easy to sign up, but they make it very difficult for you to extract your money from these apps, right? And a lot of folks, they don't, like a lot of public officials, they have no idea, like, how these apps work, because one of it's being rolled out at lightning speed, but most of them, they're not using this stuff. So they have no idea. But your kids are using it, your grandkids, they're on this stuff. And these prediction apps, they don't have to be 18. So you have high school kids going on these things. It's out of control. It's broke. So anyone who stands up and say online gambling is a good thing, it is so out of control. It's gambling fentanyl.
And I also, before asking these questions, I do want you to share one of the stories about the kid just goes into his bedroom, gambles away a bunch of money, and commits suicide the same night.
Oh, yeah.
Like that's happening in multiple places.
Yeah.
This morning, were you here this morning?
I was, yeah. Unfortunately, not, yeah.
We were talking about election, and one of the certified that can certify election voting machines actually is by Gaming Laboratory International. Okay. Now,
It's good.
who
I didn't know that, actually.
is the international Gaming Laboratory International?
Yeah, I think I don't know who the international one is.
How much of this profit, quote unquote profit,
Yeah.
actually goes?
Yeah, honestly, it's a $1 million question, and I love it. I don't know the answer, so but I'm going to find out the answer, but I don't know the answer right now. But I will say, but what she brings up, I didn't even do the prediction markets justice. Okay, what she just brought, you can wager on elections. You talk about, there already enough corruption in America. The idea that you're going to allow to wager on state rep races and state senate races, and can you imagine what that's going to look like? You're talking about perverting our democracy. That's one of the biggest prediction markets aspects. You can wager on the outcome of elections, state, local, national. It's unbelievable, and that's what needs to be stopped. It has to be on your priority list as a concerned citizen in this country.
Well, Les, I thought those prediction markets too, they fall under the different rules, and maybe you said that. So they're really they're saying states can't regulate this. This is
right. That's what they claim. The federal government has the ability to shut these guys down. The problem is and again, this is a problem of both parties. This isn't just a political right or a political left problem. So right now, you've got the people nominated to lead the Commodities Futures Trading Commission. They all have ties to these prediction markets. Okay, so and one of the president's relatives actually has two companies. He's got investments and financial relationships with these companies. So and both parties do this. So it's not a partisan statement to say that, but that's the problem is you have these entrenched interests who are profiting from this. So it's we're all going to shield our eyes and let these companies explode, and we're not going to enforce the law and stop this. So there is litigation pending. You have state attorney generals today are suing these prediction market companies for violating their state gambling laws. And it's kind of perverse because the state of New Jersey, which is one of the worst predatory gambling states in the country, they're suing, they're the lead plaintiff against Kalshi because they're violating the New Jersey gambling laws, right? In New Jersey, because the state wants to keep it, right? So it's right. It's this race to the bottom, and we've set it off because states have normalized gambling to the extent we have.
I think our politicians are addicted to gambling.
Yeah. Well, some of them are, for sure, because they're addicted to the campaign money. And a lot of them, I didn't put it up here today because I think I used the slide a year ago, but one of my favorite talking points is most of the politicians, the gambling operators, the slot machine makers, the governors who lobby for predatory gambling and say, it's great for your family, it's great for your grandchildren to be on this, but great for your community to have a casino. But you know what? I don't gamble myself. I have retirement funds. I have an emergency fund for a crisis. But the rest of you, knock yourself out. Buy your $100 scratch-off tickets. Play the slot machines in the laundromat. That's what's broken about America. We talk about making America great again. The public voice of American government today, except for Alabama and 2 or 3 other states, the public voice of American government, where we advertise to the American people more than anything else, is gambling, advertising, and marketing. When I was a kid growing up in the 1970s, we used to have ads with John Wayne. He'd come on camera, he'd say, invest in your country, buy U.S. savings bonds. Now, during the Christmas season, in state after state, not in Alabama, thankfully, but in Georgia, you know what the perfect gift for your relatives is? What the perfect stocking stuffer is for your kids? What's the perfect gift for your coworkers? Scratch tickets. Think about it. My Italian immigrant grandmother used to give me a savings bond. Now you have grandparents giving their kids scratch. Think of this. Talk about financial peace. It's the antithesis of who we are as a nation. How do you expand a middle class when the public voice of American government is exploiting low-income people and middle-income people on every street corner and now through their phones? That's why it's not about gambling. This is the institution of predatory gambling, and it's broken. It's failed, and we need to roll it back.
So you said you're technically correct when you say the state of Alabama doesn't allow gambling and have restrictions, but keep in mind that means all of the land the state has control over.
Sure.
Because Becky knows in Wetumpka on an Indian reservation, we have these big casinos.
Yeah.
And the sports gambling is in Alabama because they have the servers on the reservation, so it's not technically in Alabama.
Understood, yeah.
So, and also, if we start cracking down on that, the largest employer in Escambia County is Wind Creek Casinos, and they employ over 1,000 people. So how would we deal with that problem?
Yeah. So those jobs, those 1,000 jobs, that includes part-time jobs, okay? And one of the data points that I always do is, and I actually do it here for Alabama, because I don't know if you have the numbers here, but I take the state of Pennsylvania. The state of Pennsylvania has got 10 casinos statewide, all right? There's roughly, over the last, this is right from the Pennsylvania Gambling Commission, more than 30,000 citizens have signed up to request what's called self-exclusion from on the state casino list. So that when you self-exclude, that means these casinos are ruining my life. You have to ban me from them, okay? The casino doesn't cut you off. You, the citizen, have to go in, put yourself on this list, fill out the paperwork, and you have to ban yourself. It's called self-exclusion. Roughly 92% of the citizens who are addicted to gambling don't ever come forward for help. Okay, so the people that actually self-exclude, that's just a sliver. That's really the tip of the iceberg. So that being said, there's 30,000 citizens in Pennsylvania who've self-excluded. Guess how many people work at the state's casinos, including part-time jobs? About 15,000 people. Okay, casinos create more addicts than they do jobs. Okay, and these are jobs based. If that was a shoe factory, I don't have to lose my shoes for you to go get a pair of shoes. But for those people to get a job, the rest of the community has to lose, and lose big, in order for a handful of people to benefit. And that's a complete opposite of a rising tide, raises all boats. So that's why this is the regional casinos. They've been a failed economic. It's another part of the con is that any kind of economic engine. If this was a more liberal state, one of the lines they always use is casino jobs. Labor unions love to stand up and say jobs with justice. Well, casino jobs are jobs with injustice. They cause brokenheartedness and poverty. And no one else can really say that they work in a job that causes people broken hearts and poverty.
Thank you. My name is Ted Holly, and I'm also involved in the addiction and recovery movement. And I know, for example, like in pornography, 50% of men, 40% of women deal with it as a problem. Do we have a similar figure for that for men and women and teens in states that do have gambling?
Yeah, so I don't have my fingertips, but there's been some data, like the percentages of young people that are on these apps, these gambling apps, I want to say it's like 60 to 70%. Or actually, like if you're in a college today or in high school, like I put that analogy with, I had a Michael Jordan rookie card on in one of my slides, that was a basketball card from the mid-1980s. When I was growing up as a kid, like people used to collect sports cards. Okay, that's how young men particularly used to follow their favorite teams and athletes. Today, if you're 12 years old and you're growing up in New Jersey, if you're not normal anymore unless you're talking about gambling, parlay bets, in the school playgrounds, in the school cafeteria, school locker rooms. So the number of young people that are participating in this are it's like 3 out of 4. It's huge percentages, and so that's why you have an epidemic of gambling addiction today amongst these young folks. And so even in college, guys sitting around watching a sporting event today in a state where this has been legalized, they're all gambling. Almost all. You're the one outcast. If you're not gambling anymore, the peer pressure to participate is unbelievable. You talk about, it used to be peer pressure to drink alcohol. Now it's about participate in online gambling. In online gambling, alcohol is certainly an addictive product. Online gambling is a whole nother level of addictiveness. And that's why so many young men and teenagers are getting wiped out by this. So thank you for your question.
When I was telling you all that we had a new website that's getting ready to come online, we have new pages for our gambling stuff. And a lot of it, thank you, was taken from you and what we learned at the conference. There is, I would encourage all of you, if you have kids or grandkids, just ask them. Are kids in your school talking about online gambling? And they may not want to come out and tell you that they're doing it. But just find out. It would be interesting. Any of the Student Eagles, I think, are outside right now doing a podcast. Are there any students left in here right now that go to public school? Do you know friends that are doing online gambling?
Not really.
I would think it would be less in Alabama.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, because it's not normalized. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But I also will say too, just so we're clear, we talk about the end game for these companies isn't sports gambling. If you have kids growing up playing video games, because states have normalized gambling so much. These companies design gambling into video games. So they call it loot boxes. So if you ever have a grandkid or kids, they come to you, hey, can I have the credit card to buy this new armor for this game or to get access to this new, new pair of cleats on this FIFA game, whatever it may be? That's called, they put random number generators in these loot boxes. A random number generator is what slot machine makers use to give the randomness experience of playing a slot. They're putting random number generators inside loot boxes. So it's like a slot machine type experience. So kids, I'm not doing a loot box justice because I don't play video games, so it's hard for me to explain it. But those of you if you ask kids who use video games, ask them about loot boxes and how there's a randomness to it. So if you want that fancy armor, you put money into it, but you may not always get that armor. And then you get put more money into it. So your parents all of a sudden look at their credit card bill. Why is there a $2,000 bill to this video game company? Because the kids are hooked on these loot boxes. So they're have designed gambling into video games that all kids play.
And their poor little brains.
Yeah.
They don't have the rationale.
This is a business based on targeting kids because that's what addiction develops for most people is when they're young. So that's why they target the young people.
I do want to give you one more update, which is perfect timing. Our next speaker is from the AG's office. She's the general counsel for the AG. So many of you may have heard, or you may be seeing on social media that now Wind Creek casino is some advertising online gambling in Alabama. And we're all like, wait, what? They can't be doing that. And it is because their servers are on the Porch Creek property, which is federal, and it's all okay. So we asked the Attorney General about that. And I do know that a cease and desist letter has been sent to Porch Creek, but I don't know that that's actually, I don't know the outcome. I don't know if y'all are still seeing ads. I have a feeling it would probably take more than a
Well, I would just say, you have class 2 gambling here, because they got in the bingo. Like, sports gambling is not class 2. So, like, the idea that they're getting away, like, that's how they circumvented all this. Like, Florida, the tribes got it there because there's a statewide constitution requirement in Florida. They had to have a vote, but the tribes like, we're going to ignore your state laws, and we're just going to try to, not give the people a vote on this. And they did it. They just claimed that the servers were on the limit. But they already had class 3 in Florida.
Okay, so that's a
So
little bit-
that's a pushback I would say.
So that we do just have class 2 gaming. We don't have all that other stuff.
Yeah.
But
If you legalize casinos, they're going to get full access to everything. So
Right.
then everything's off the board. So.
Right. Well, give him a hand. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I get to do this for fun, but I'm